start by just giving your brains a bit of exercise and ask you the question, how many lessons do you think take place or are supposed to take place in South African schools in a year? Now, I know that many of you have got cell phones, so you can whip out a cell phone and jump to the calculator section, but let me just do some basic calculation for you. If you consider that there are 27,000 schools more or less in South Africa, and that there are, let's say on average, 6 grades per school, and 3 classes per grade, and 8 lessons in a day, and 200 lessons in a year, 200 days in a year, school days. And you multiply all those figures together, what you will find, I know people are rushing to code. I'll get you to there quickly. 777 million lessons in schools in South Africa in any given year. I'll just give you the figures again. 27,000 schools, 6 grades per school, 3 classes per grade, and I'm being very conservative in these figures, 8 periods a day, 200 days a year. You multiply those numbers together, you will end up with nearly 800 million lessons. Clearly, the only thing that matters, if I can pick up from where you left off, sir, the only thing that matters is the teachers. Okay? It's the only thing that matters. And people will tell you that they need toilets, and they need science labs, and they need all sorts of things. But in fact, what they need are good teachers. That's what they need. And everything we do to ensure that the children of South Africa and Africa get a good education must be aimed at ensuring that we're putting good teachers in classrooms. Now, I say that in the context of what I want to start speaking about in a moment. But I also want to do another side part quickly and talk about, I don't know if you've heard of a chap called Benjamin Zander. He's the composer of the Boston Philharmonic, and he and his wife have written a book called The Art of Possibility. And in it he tells the story of this minister who is in his office. He's got a visiting minister with him, and while they're in the office, somebody comes running into the room in a great panic. And it's, really, there's chaos and disaster, and the minister says, sir, just calm down. Remember rule number 3. Or 7, 10, 6, 23. Rule number 6. I forget. And the man calms down. Walks out. A few minutes later, the lady comes into the office. Hair's all flying all over the place. Totally chaotic. Chaos, disaster, and he says, please, ma'am, calm down. Remember rule number 6. She says, oh, sorry, minister. Bows away up and walks away. And it happens a 3rd time, because in these stories it always happens a 3rd time. And eventually the other visiting minister turns to his colleague and says, please, colleague, I've watched 3 people run into your office in total chaos and disarray, and every time you've told them to remember rule number 6, and they've calmed down and walked out. Can you please share with us this magic of what rule number 6 is? And the minister says, yes, rule number 6, very easy. Don't take yourself so damn seriously. And he says to him, yes, but what are the other rules? He says, there are no other rules. Just don't take yourself so damn seriously. Sacred Heart College doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a private Catholic school in Observatory, Johannesburg. It's a Marist school. There are 5 Marist schools in South Africa. There used to be 10. And it was founded, I beat you, sir, we were founded in 1889. Okay, it's the 2nd oldest school in Johannesburg. The winning school was founded in 1888, and it was one of the first schools to open its doors to children of all races. In 1976, Sacred Heart took on its first black students after the riots. It opened its doors to children of returning exiles in 1990. And what I'm talking about today is the fact that in 2008, we started a school for refugee children, or an educational project for refugee children at Sacred Heart College. Now, Wittgenstein said, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. The limits of my language are the limits of my world. And I will get back to that in a moment, because it is critical to an understanding of the function of a school within its community and the community towards the school. If you go to Sacred Heart College, we've got a postal address in Houghton. We used to have a postal address in Yeovil, but we charged 45,000 Rand a year for fees, and we felt that parents wouldn't want to send their children to a school with a postal address in Yeovil, so we changed to Houghton as our postal address. But Sacred Heart College has this unique ability. It sits along a road called Bezuidenhout Street. On this side of the road, you're in flat land. Tiny little flats, 5 families living in one room. On that side of the street, mansions. It's the Gini coefficient. If you stand over here and you look ahead, you see the Gini coefficient on both sides. Those who don't know, that's the measure for the difference between the haves and the have-nots in any country. Okay. And of course, by charging 45,000 Rand a year, we are selecting for an elite. Okay, we have people who can afford it sending their children to our school, the financial elite of South Africa. I think the other schools, they charge a lot more, so maybe that's the financial super elite. But it's only half of who we are. Because on that side of the Bezuidenhout Street are the people who can't afford to come to Sacred Heart College. Now, we used to get a government subsidy, and we used to use that government subsidy for scholarships, but unfortunately we don't anymore. So we used to have about 28% of our students with a scholarship at our school. We're now down to about 16%, I think. But, you know, we then have to say, and that's again where I'm going, given that charging 45,000 Rand a year means that when I go to ZX Foundation or someplace like that, they're going to say, no, we can't give our money to you, Mr. Northman. There's the school out in Limpopo province doing remarkable work, and we've got to give our money to them. And they're right. How does a school like ours then become relevant in an environment like that? Remember what I said about Wittgenstein? The word outreach is a very specific way of defining and by implication limiting the work done by schools to encourage young children to develop a spirit of compassion. We picture someone standing firmly in a place of safety, reaching out to save someone who's in danger of falling. And the implication is that the person reaching out has nothing to gain other than the satisfaction of having saved or helped a fellow human being. Today, many Catholic schools are considered to be elite institutions providing an excellent standard of education to the socially advantaged and wealthier parts of our community. It's true. And if you look at many of the suburban schools, you've got a similar pattern emerging. The middle class, the ones that can afford 16,000 Rand a year, or whatever these middle class state schools are charging these days, that's where they go. Many of the outreach programs are a response to a desire to ensure that these elite children engage with the social inequalities in their communities. And what 3 to 6 taught us was that these engagements usually fell short of their purpose because they served to reinforce the social inequalities and confirm the message that the Western world has for us about the importance of work. It's very comfortable for me. I will go to the AIDS orphanage on a Saturday morning, or I will go to the old age home on a Wednesday afternoon, and I will help the person there, and I will feed the baby, and I will make a cup of tea for the old folks, and then I will retreat back to my safe environment. And in fact, quite interestingly for me, is to see how many of the wealthier independent schools are shying away from sending children to places that are not so savory. We're not sure. Are our kids going to be safe? You know, we have a big mass every year, a grade 11 mass in Soweto. It's always fun watching schools find reasons why they shouldn't have to send their children into Soweto. Okay. I can't. My kids come from Soweto. So it's a fun engagement. But this is the problem. I'm so glad that's not me. That's what you're teaching children. I'm so glad that's not me. Okay. It's a lot easier to assist others in need when it does not require tangible sacrifice on your part. This does not mean that, I'm not trying to say that these are not good pieces of work. I don't mean to insult schools that do fantastic work through outreach. I'm not saying that they don't do good work. I'm not saying that they don't provide immeasurable support to people who would otherwise not have that support. Children do amazing charity drives, and as a result of those charity drives, ARVs can be bought for people who would otherwise sicken and die. I'm not denying that, but is it really what we're trying to teach our children? Because what I say is, the intentions that drive these works are good, and the support they provide is those in need is immeasurable, but at their heart there's a fundamental flaw. Our experience of 3 to 6 has taught us that it is this fundamental flaw that ultimately leads to the demise of these projects and fatally undermines their long-term effects. One is reminded of the African saying about teaching someone to fish. You know that saying? Giving someone a fish and teaching someone to fish. Okay. And most of these outreach programs are concerned with handing fish out. All right. So what did we learn? That a wealthy, elitist institution was actually on the receiving end of the charity. The tangible benefits for Sacred Heart College were as measurable and as important as the tangible benefits were for the refugee children. And that ensuring success of the project required that we compromise. Now, I'm talking about 3 to 6, and I haven't actually explained what it is really. It's called 3 to 6 because it runs between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Okay? And between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, I have 169 children who live in direst poverty coming to our school doing maths, English, and life skills. We feed them, we clothe them, we transport them. And they come and they sit in the classrooms that would otherwise be empty. And I employ refugee teachers to teach them. Because you can't ask your teachers who are working from 8 o'clock in the morning to work until, well, you can, sir, but you can't ask them to work until 6 o'clock at night because they've got families too, you know. Okay. And, well, I do sometimes. And I'm willing to bet you, and I'll make myself unpopular for a moment, if I go into any number of government township schools, and I looked at the work that had been done in the maths books, and I looked at the work that had been done in the English books, from a whole day of teaching, I'm willing to put my 3 to 6 work performance up against that any day of the week, and expect it to come out top. Because it's about time and task. It doesn't matter that you've only got 3 hours if you use all 3 hours to work. That's what 3 to 6 is. But it became clear to us that to provide a basic education for refugee children, we have to integrate those children into the structures of our school. 3 to 6, why are you listening to me? I'll tell you why I think you should listen to me. Because your school will be enriched by following a similar concept. That if you say it's not about outreach, but it's about inreach, it's not about what I can give, but about what we can experience, and how, by changing the lives of 169 refugee children, I changed the lives of 889 wealthy ones. That's what makes this powerful. I once heard a project that was designed to reach out, by wealthier schools to reach out to poorer schools, called a brave stretch. And I made myself very unpopular by asking, who's been brave and why do you have to stretch? Essentially, the brave stretches of wealthy educational institutions amount to an attempt to justify their existence, particularly if they're Catholic, in a context where there is no morally defensible position to adopt. You have, they don't. You can't defend that. Actually, you can't defend having more than the school down the road. You can't defend getting matric pass rates in your school and being satisfied that you're lucky not to be the other school. There is no morally defensible position that says our school at Sacred Heart College should have an indoor basketball court while the school down the road struggles with the feeding scheme. 3 to 6 has taught us that common good requires a true unpacking of both these words. The common implies that the process must benefit all who engage in it. By celebrating what's right in the world, we find the energy to fix what's wrong. Okay. The sustainability has gained strength because, yes, we provide uniforms and food and lessons in English and maths and training for teachers and dignity for people. And in the process, we have to give up our classrooms and share our playgrounds and view the children as our own. And the effect of this is powerful. I don't know, I'm from a Christian background, so one of the stories, one of the myths that we love is the story of the 5 loaves of bread and the 3 fish. I always get my numbers wrong. Might be 3 loaves of bread and 5 fish. But I don't know if you can imagine the enormous fun that must have been. Can you imagine the enormous fun that must have been had by those apostles? We've got 3 little fish here, and everybody gets, and the more that come, the more we can give, and there's just like no end of. I mean, can you imagine the miracle itself happening and the fun it must have been? And one of the things I worry about in our education system is that we've lost our sense of fun. We take ourselves too damn seriously. And, you know, it's such a serious job, this teaching. The pride, dignity, and growing self-esteem of our refugee children is a testament to the power that is held and the possibilities of true common good are achieved. I have new blinds in my classrooms. I have new toilets. I have 3 brand new combis that the children use. I have. We have. The school has. And that's how principals always talk about I when they mean we. We have resources that we could never have asked for as a wealthy, independent school. And I take every opportunity when my day students climb into the combi and drive to soccer to remind them that it's because of the refugee children that they've got a combi to climb into and drive to the soccer with. I take enormous pleasure in reminding them when they pull the blinds down so that they can watch a movie, that it's because of the refugee children that they can pull those blinds down, that their parents couldn't afford to give us the money to put those blinds in the classroom. But without the refugee children, they would have to walk to the soccer. You see, the insight and the Wittgensteinian part of this is that if you talk about outreach, you're creating a power relationship between those that give and those that receive. And if you want common good, if you really want an institution in where the children who come from advantaged homes understand the meaning and nature of that advantage and are infused and willing to become involved in dealing with the inequities in our society. If you want to teach equality, then you have to live it. And then you have to create situations where the children have to sacrifice. I had dealt with the conflict. The teacher came to see me because she had a whole lot of little motor cars in her drawer and a bit of chocolate on her desk. And when she got back the next morning, there was no chocolate on the desk and there was no cars in the drawer. And I said to me, it's those refugee children. And so it was great. I could say to her, but why? Why do you think the refugee children took the chocolates in the cars? And why did they have to steal it? What was the chocolate doing on the desk and what were the cars doing in the drawer? Nothing. Well, then why didn't you give it to them in the first place? If you weren't using them, why did you keep them? Okay. How many of your classrooms stand empty in the afternoons? There are street children. Let me just tell you what we've learned. we've learned that, now just to give you an understanding, these children that we are teaching have been out of school. Some of them had to run away from their homes because of war. I have children from Rwanda, from Somalia, from DRC, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Zimbabwe. These children have left with no birth certificates, no records of previous previous academic schooling. Thank you very much. I'm so glad to see they go and apply to go to one of the state schools. And what does the school ask for? Can I have your birth certificate? Can I have your previous report? Can I have? Okay, the barriers, the bureaucratic barriers that are established that prevent children from accessing a basic right to education in our country are enormous. Okay. But the exciting thing about 3 to 6, I've got a nurse, a part-time nurse that works at our school who creates birth certificates. She looks at the child and she measures things and she says, okay, this child, I'm talking about height and width and bone density, okay? And she writes down that it is her estimate and her professional opinion that this child is no more than 8 years old. And then we produce a certificate for the child following the first term of work for maths and English, and there's a report. And suddenly when that child goes to a state school and applies to go in, they've got a birth certificate sort of, and they've got a report almost, and it's very hard to create barriers in those circumstances for these children. One of my graduates of the 3 to 6 project, because the purpose, for those who don't know, is that the children should not spend more than 18 months in this project before getting into a real school. And one of our children went from the 3 to 6 project into a state school. She's from the DRC. She won the top prize for Afrikaans in the province. Okay? Yeah, explain that one to me. Top prize for Afrikaans. She speaks French. Okay? One of the things we realized, I had these children for about 6 months, beautifully behaved, beautifully. Not a peep out. I thought I was in heaven. And then they started to fight and steal each other's lunch and write funny things on a wall, and suddenly they turned into these monsters. And we sat down and we looked at it and we realized something. We'd been feeding them for 6 months, where they'd gone through a situation with no food for years. They were healthy. They were immunized. We ran an immunization program for them. They were welcome. They were home. The classroom was theirs. What I was experiencing was children behaving like children. How remarkable is that? Okay. I've got a book that we are publishing. We got funding from Europe to publish the book. The children, during the World Cup, we were worried about child trafficking. So we ran a special program for our 3 to 6 project during the World Cup holiday so that we could be taking a register every day so we would notice if anybody went missing. And during that program, the children voted for representatives from their class to go and work with an external service provider on producing a book on what it means to be a refugee in South Africa. We're about to publish that book. In fact, in November we launched that particular book. But one of the pages in the book has got photographs of families that have been left behind and messages to those families. Sweet doesn't even begin to describe it. It is the most awe-inspiring thing. There are South African street children who have forgotten what it means to be in school. How do we reclaim them? There are children in state schools next door to independent schools, where the independent school like mine is getting a 67% maths average and a 96% exemption rate and multiple distinctions in all sorts of disciplines, while the children in the next door school are failing in droves. 3 to 6 is so engaging because it says, take what you have and share it with those that don't. I'm finished. Last, it says conclusion. You see, hey, we must have been reading the same script. No outreach is sustainable unless it includes inreach. The power, the energy, the excitement of 3 to 6. And let me just tell you, the Anne Frank Foundation funded this project. And they said to us, it's the only project we've ever funded in South Africa. And we don't know why we're funding it, because it doesn't meet any of our funding criteria. But we like it, so we're going to give you some money. The Open Society gave us money for this project. They said, no, it doesn't match the criteria of any funding proposal that we accept usually, but we'll give you a little bit of money. I was engaged by something you said, sir. Nothing, you didn't say it now, you said it in a previous talk that I listened to you talk at. Nothing succeeds like success. Okay, nobody fights with a school like yours when you're getting the results you get. They all fight with you. I know you probably think of all the fights you've had to deal with. If you want your children to learn the value of social cohesion, create opportunities for them to give up what they hold dear. I get visited by schools, we get visited by schools that say, how did you do it? You've got this completely integrated school. When I talk about integration, when I talk about issues of race in my school, the children, they say, sir, please won't you just get a life? We're so past that. Get a life. Can we now get on with real things? I had one kid walk into my office and say, sir, you know, I've had some mediocre teachers in my time. Grade 10. Now you're the principal and you've got to explain why the parents are paying 45,000 rand and she's had some mediocre teachers. You know the time. You get that. You get that when you have a basic understanding that everybody is important. Everybody. The person who cleans the classroom. Make sure that the children succeed. The person who is standing outside begging is just as important.